They built a hotel on my land right over the orchard I planted for my late wife. The HOA president stood there smiling, waving a forged paper with my name on it, pretending I'd donated the property. That's when I realized they hadn't just stolen land, they'd stolen something sacred. But they made one fatal mistake. They picked a fight with a man who owns a demolition company. It started on a Tuesday morning. The sound that woke me wasn't birds or wind through the trees. It was the low rumble of a diesel engine and the shrill beep, beep, beep of a truck in reverse. I pulled on my boots, still half asleep, thinking maybe a delivery truck had the wrong address. But when I stepped out onto the porch with my coffee in hand, I froze. My fence was gone. Not damaged, gone. The entire 100-foot stretch that marked my back line had vanished, replaced by red mud and tire tracks. And right in the middle of it, 4 men in hard hats were laying wooden forms for concrete 50 feet inside my property. Right where Mary's orchard used to be. The apple trees, the pear trees, the cherry tree she'd babied for years, gone. Splintered stumps and churned dirt were all that was left. My chest tightened a mix of disbelief and nausea. I walked down toward the crew, slow and controlled. You don't charge in unless you understand the terrain. That lesson never leaves you after the Marines. Morning, the foreman said, casual, as if I'd asked for directions. We'll have it cleaned up. You're on my land, I told him, my voice flat. He glanced at his tablet, swiped. Says here this is HOA community land. Phase 1 of the new Haverford Lodge. I pointed to an old iron stake sticking out of the mud. That mark's been there 60 years. My grandfather said it himself. You're 54 feet inside my line. He shrugged. Talk to your HOA buddy. I just build. And right on cue, a white sedan pulled up. Out stepped Connie Hernandez. Clipboard, sunglasses, fake concern plastered across her face. Jack, she cooed. I heard there was some confusion. Don't worry, everything's in order. She smiled at the foreman. Excellent progress, gentlemen. Then she turned to me. Jack, you donated this back acre years ago. For community development. We have your signature. My pulse slowed. I never signed any easement. Oh, but you did, she said, lips curling. It was all public record. I stared at her standing on my wife's memorial garden, acting like she owned it. That smile of hers wasn't human. It was the look of someone who thinks they can't be touched. That night, I drove to the county records office and requested every deed, every easement filed under my name. The signature on their document looked like a child's attempt to trace my name. I filed a formal complaint, attached copies of everything. I expected justice. Instead, a week later, I got a certified letter from the HOA, a $400 fine for threatening a board member. Signed unanimously. I remember standing on the porch, letter in one hand, looking at the construction site in the distance. They'd already poured the foundation. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated theft. They thought I'd just roll over some quiet widower with no fight left. They didn't know who I used to be. I'm a Marine. 20 years in explosive ordnance disposal. I know how to fight when the enemy hides behind rules. So I stopped being angry. I got methodical. I started documenting everything: photos, logs, timestamps. I bought a drone, flew it at dawn and dusk, filming every inch of progress. They fined me $2,000 for unauthorized aerial surveillance. Then another fine for grass being too tall. They were trying to bleed me dry. My daughter Laura came by one night, worry etched all over her face. Dad, this isn't worth it. They'll take the house. Please, just walk away. Laura, I said quietly, they're not just taking land. They're trying to erase her. She didn't get it. She thought it was about dirt. I was watching them bulldoze my wife's memory. Weeks passed. My neighbors stopped waving. The HOA spread lies that I was unstable, violent, hoarding explosives. The isolation was total. It reminded me of walking into hostile villages overseas, smiles that hide knives. One evening, when I couldn't take it anymore, I drove out to the cemetery and sat by Mary's grave. I told her everything. About the forgery, the fines, the lies. My voice cracked. They won't stop, Mary. They just keep pushing. For a while, I sat there in silence. Then I heard myself whisper one word. Power. That's what this was about. Connie's obsession with control. And I realized I'd been playing defense the whole time. You don't beg bullies to stop. You remove them from the board. The next morning, I called an old friend, Mick Alvarez, city inspector. We met at a greasy diner just like old times. I showed him the documents. He pulled out his laptop, cross-referenced the parcel maps. "Jack," he said, turning the screen toward me, "there's no easement. Never was. They filed it last year. Fraudulent as hell." It was the first real proof I had. That night, I set up trail cams on the trees overlooking the construction site. 2 nights later, I caught Connie's nephew sneaking in after midnight pouring concrete without permits. I saved every frame. Feeling bold, I made a mistake. I built a new fence, heavy steel chain link, right on my true property line. Within days, a courier delivered court papers. The HOA was suing me for violating community aesthetics. They even threatened foreclosure. That broke me. Laura moved out saying she was scared of what they'd do. My neighbors avoided eye contact. The house was silent, just the hum of the fridge and the echo of my own anger. One afternoon, I snapped. I slammed the fines onto the desk and yelled, "What do they want from me?" Then I laughed, a bitter, empty sound, because I knew the answer. They wanted me gone. But I wasn't leaving. I made another call, this time to How Ralph, an old Army buddy who runs one of the biggest demolition firms in the state. "Hypothetical question," I said. "If someone builds an unauthorized structure on my land using forged permits, can I remove it?" He chuckled. "Hell yes, Jack. If the permits are invalid, that's not their building. It's your problem and you've got every right to clear it." That was all I needed. For 3 weeks, I worked quietly. Filed insurance updates, obtained legal documentation, and applied for a demolition permit under my company name. The paperwork was ironclad GPS survey forensic analysis environmental report, even a copy of the HOA's Facebook post thanking me for donating the land. When the city reviewed it, the answer came fast: the hotel's permits were void due to fraud. My demolition permit approved immediately. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. My trucks rolled down the street, engines, low hazard lights blinking. My crew professionals set up a 200-foot safety perimeter, caution tape fluttering in the breeze. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Then came the screech of tires, Connie's SUV skidding to a stop. She jumped out, face red, hair disheveled. "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed. "You're trespassing." I didn't even raise my voice. "Morning, Connie. You're standing on my land. The only construction happening here today is demolition. And please call the cops, saves me the trouble." 15 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers got out calm and professional. Connie ran to them, waving her clipboard like a sword. "Officer, he's threatening to blow up the community center." The senior officer sighed. "Ma'am, the city verified the permit. You're trespassing. Step back behind the safety line." That's when I saw real fear on her face for the first time. I turned to my foreman. "All clear." He nodded. "Charges set." I placed my thumb on the detonator, eyes locked on Connie's. Somewhere in the crowd, someone started counting down 10, 9, 8 until the whole street joined in. When I pressed the button, it wasn't a cinematic explosion, just a deep crack, a low rumble, and then the structure folded in on itself like it was bowing to the earth. 20 seconds later, it was dust. Silence, then applause, the sound of freedom. Connie lost it. She screamed, charged through the tape, tried to claw the detonator from my hand. The cops grabbed her, dragged her back while phones recorded every second. By nightfall, the video had gone viral. HOA Karen gets demolished, that was the headline. Local news picked it up then, national. 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Their plan, to censure me for destroying community property. The gym was packed. Connie sat up front, pale but defiant. When they handed me the mic, I didn't yell. I showed them evidence, the real survey map, the forgery report, the midnight video of her nephew trespassing, and a letter from their insurance company, policy canceled for fraud. The crowd turned on them. "Dissolve the board," someone shouted. Dozens of hands went up. Connie's empire collapsed right there in that gym. By the end of the week, she was gone. Her nephew's business license revoked. The HOA stripped of power. I stood on my land, the rubble cleared the orchard bare, but waiting. The wind was quiet again. They thought power was something you could steal with a signature and a smile. I showed them what real power looks like when a man stands his ground.